Hi, this is Coach Russ. This evening I wanted to go over some basic information regarding our defensive coverage for our Quakers team. Please take a moment to view this video, as all players will be responsible for understanding their roles and responsibilities relative to defensive zone coverage. My model is, in terms of our systems, is that our defensive positioning and our defensive zone coverage creates opportunities offensively. The model that we'll be running relative to a system for our defensive zone coverage is called a box plus one, or a modified box plus one. What you will see is in most NHL teams run some variant of a box plus one format, and so if you watch any typical NHL team, you'll be able to correspond a lot of what we'll be able to see here to the positioning structures of defensive zone coverage at the NHL level. This is a very straightforward defense to model against, and depending upon player personnel, the approach can be either a press or contain approach. We will potentially evolve our approach as we start to learn our player and personnel as the season goes on. I'm going to walk through each particular position's responsibilities, and again, depending upon your particular position, please pay close attention to this. But at the same time, please make sure you understand everybody else's roles and responsibilities so you can provide appropriate support when on the ice. We'll start off with the role of the center within the box plus one format. The role of the center is in essence the third defenseman. The role of the center in this modified box plus one format is to be a low center, which means you're playing below the hash marks in general. I'll use the term in general to represent the typical positioning. What I mean by that is that there may be situations of particular breakdowns or emergency situations where the center may need to go up higher into the zone, but in general, the center will play below the hash marks. That means they're staying within this area, providing support in various areas, and providing that third defensive coverage. The center will also provide support when the puck is down low and help out with the defenseman. If the defenseman is beat and this particular forward on the opposing team comes out, the center can provide primary support and primary defensive coverage. If this defenseman is beat with a puck and the puck comes up to the half boards relative to that forward, the center will provide primary coverage for that particular defenseman, that particular forward, which allows this defenseman then to cover for potentially a give and go. So the center's role is truly a third defenseman and is oftentimes the last person out of the zone. So typically my structure is not to have my most dynamic offensive powerhouse be the center position. Why? Because if the center is last out of the zone, I want to be able to have somebody else, potentially a right wing or a left wing, be an ability to have a breakaway and one-on-one type of dynamics. So my center is a very defensive-minded center, a very two-way player, and somebody who can play smart in our zone and know how to look up ice and find the outlet person. The next role that I'm going to cover are the wings, both right wing and left wing. We'll cover in this particular situation, since the layout of this drawing shows the right wing is on the strong side of the puck. When you are on the strong side of the puck, you're going to have tighter coverage on the defenseman who's at the blue line. He's the more predominant threat. The left wing, on the weak side, will provide a sag coverage and will be closer to the hash marks and covering the zone, covering the slot. In this instance here, the right wing is again going to be playing up high, and then if the puck happens to come up here and the center is providing coverage, the right wing is looking for this defenseman potentially to come in and is following that defenseman. So oftentimes, while you're providing almost a zone-like defensive coverage, you will have one-on-one responsibilities if a particular defenseman looks to try to drive in. This right wing, you need to follow that drive and make sure that you cover that option. Same thing in terms of the defenseman here. Typically you're providing a zone coverage, but again, if that comes in, it's your responsibility to follow that person. The right wings again and left wing generally will not go below the hash marks. And again, if you watch many NHL teams in terms of the defensive coverage, if the puck comes to this individual here and somebody's trying to press and all of a sudden the puck goes down, this right wing is not going to follow. This right wing will almost stop and hold out here, making sure that they're taking away this opportunity and then retreat back depending upon where this player goes. So again, right wings and left wings generally do not go below the hash marks. Again, if there's defensive breakdowns or emergency situations, we would fully expect that to occur. This provides the maximum coverage and opportunities. We'll continue on with the left wing, and then we'll work on our D1 and D2s. The left wing, again, if you're on the weak side, you're in a sag coverage situation and you're providing slot coverage. So we want to have slot coverage both low and high, and that's where the defenseman is going to be covering the low slot coverage and the left wing is covering high slot coverage. You can be off and sagging back simply because this particular defenseman is not an imminent threat. If the puck does come around and starts to come up higher, then you can start to retreat a little bit higher and provide more coverage up high. The next player we're going to look at are the defensemen. So the defensemen, typically, I do not want our defensemen going behind the net. So typically what I want to make sure of is that our defensemen are not following the puck behind the net. So as situations arise where potentially this player is coming behind, this defenseman's going to seal, this defenseman's going to seal, and this center is going to cover the slot. So now there's no options for this particular player. They can hang out there all day, and there's no options for that player to go to. All potential options are covered. If this player comes in and starts to try to make an opportunity, again, right wing can cover it. This player comes down, left wing can cover it. So again, we have the maximum coverage and maximum opportunities to protect the net, and there's no options. This player then can typically come out, and then as this player comes out, D2 can then pursue, D1 takes net front, and center provides support. So again, center is providing that support and making that coverage. So we want our Ds to really stay active in the low side. Again, Ds, no different than the center, typically do not go above the hash marks. So in this rotation, as we've shown here, we're going to have a slide of the rotation in terms of their positioning. Our left wing will now be playing up high. Our right wing will be providing sagging coverage. And even if in a situation here where you have somebody behind the net, we can allow them to stay behind the net, and we can then provide goal front support. So if this player wants to try to sneak out here, this is where the C provides that third defensive support. D has a net front presence and can ensure that nobody's going to be walking out. So we can have full coverage here and all players covered. Again, strong side, weak side. And again, if this player goes to come in, left wing will follow them on a one-on-one scenario coming in. So I'm hoping this provides some basic information in terms of how we're going to provide coverage and how we're going to provide support relative to our centers, relative to our defensive positioning, and relative to the transition from one side to the other. This is an important model, and we need to get this tight because of the fact that this provides us, again, the unique opportunities for outlet passes and breakouts. Because from this particular position, once we get possession of the puck, we can then begin to transition into a breakout. So if RD2 then picks up the puck, we can then begin to transition into a breakout and begin to actually skate with that puck and move in an appropriate direction. So once we get that, our player can then begin to skate with the puck, and we can then start to model and move with the puck, move D2. Our center can then begin to curl. Our right wing moves to the hash marks, and we're ready for a breakout and an outlet. And many of the players have seen this before in terms of some of the drills we've been running lately in terms of our breakouts. So again, box plus one coverage and support, and we'll be going over this tomorrow night in our practice on Wednesday evening. But also at the same time, please make sure to review this and you understand your roles and responsibilities relative to defensive zone coverage.